There's a point that comes in almost everyone's life when they start thinking about changing something about it. And the plan feels logical, almost simple. The path looks achievable, as if obstacles are distant. And when we begin, it even seems doable at first. But soon, we start noticing that the process demands far more than we expected. What we thought was just about motivation becomes layered with repetition, uncertainty, and patience. That's when most people say they've lost motivation. But what's really happening is they've stepped into the part of the journey that requires more than just the spark. And that's where the real difference is made, between those who stop and those who adapt. In this video, we're going to discuss what happens when motivation fades and why that moment is not failure. It's a transition. We'll break down why motivation can't carry you through the entire process, what truly sustains progress, and how understanding these layers is what separates real growth from abandoned goals. Welcome to the Glitch Cult. This is where we look beyond the starting spark and into the structure of what it truly takes to build something lasting. Motivation feels real when you experience it, but if you slow down and examine the environment in which it appears, you'll notice a pattern that most people overlook. It shows up when you're not being asked to prove anything. It shows up when there is no immediate resistance, no consequence for stopping, and no demand placed on your time, attention, or consistency. In that environment, the mind is free to imagine outcomes without having to deal with the process that leads to them. When you think about becoming better, starting something new, or building a different life, you are interacting with an idea, not a system. That idea allows you to visualize results without accounting for the structure that is required to reach them. You can see yourself improving, progressing, achieving something meaningful, and in that moment, everything feels aligned. There is no contradiction, no friction, and no delay between intention and imagined outcome. Because of that, your brain generates a sense of certainty, even though nothing has actually been tested. This is where motivation comes from. It is not coming from progress. It is not coming from discipline. It is not even coming from reality. It is coming from a version of events that has not yet been exposed to time, effort, or limitation. And because this version is clean and uninterrupted, it creates a strong emotional response. You feel ready, capable, and clear about what needs to be done, even though you have not yet entered a situation where those feelings are required to hold under pressure. The important part here is not that motivation feels good. The important part is why it feels good. It feels good because nothing is being demanded from you yet. You're not being tested on your ability to continue when things are unclear. You're not being asked to repeat actions when they stop feeling rewarding. You're not dealing with a system that moves slower than your expectations. In other words, you're not interacting with reality. You are interacting with a controlled mental space where outcomes are immediate and effort is abstract. This is also why motivation can feel very convincing. It creates a sense of movement without requiring actual movement. You can spend time thinking, planning, organizing, and even talking about what you're going to do, and all of it feels like progress because it maintains the same environment where motivation exists. Nothing is challenging the idea. Nothing is forcing you to confront gaps in your knowledge or limits in your ability. As long as you stay in that space, the feeling remains stable. But this stability is not a sign of strength. It is a sign that nothing has been introduced that could disrupt it. The moment something is introduced that requires consistency, patience, or adaptation, the conditions that support motivation begin to change. And when those conditions change, the feeling that depended on them also begins to shift. Most people misunderstand this part. They assume that motivation is supposed to carry them into action and remain there. But motivation was never formed in an environment where action is tested. It was formed in an environment where action is imagined. And there is a significant difference between the two. If you look at it closely, motivation is not preparing you for the process. It is only preparing you to begin. It gives you a direction, but it does not give you the ability to stay in that direction when the experience no longer matches what you expected. And because of that, the moment you step out of the environment where nothing is required from you, you begin to notice that the feeling you relied on does not operate the same way anymore. The shift does not happen gradually. It happens the moment you begin doing something that demands continuity. As soon as you move from thinking to acting, the structure of your experience changes. You're no longer dealing with an idea that you can control. You are now dealing with a process that responds based on how consistently you engage with it. This is where most people feel like something has gone wrong. The clarity they once had starts to weaken. The energy that felt strong at the beginning becomes inconsistent. Tasks that seemed simple when imagined begin to feel repetitive or unclear when executed. And instead of recognizing that the environment has changed, they interpret this shift as a loss of motivation. But nothing has been lost. You have simply entered a space where motivation does not function. In reality, progress is not built on how you feel at the beginning. It is built on how you respond when the process stops reinforcing you, when results are delayed, when feedback is minimal, and when your effort does not immediately translate into visible improvement. The system begins to require something different from you. It requires stability instead of intensity. It requires repetition instead of excitement. It requires you to continue without relying on a feeling that was never designed to survive in this environment. This is the part that most people are not prepared for, because their entire expectation was built in a space where continuation was never tested. They expect the same level of clarity, the same emotional drive, and the same sense of certainty to exist even when the conditions are completely different. And when that does not happen, they assume they're doing something wrong, or that they are not capable enough to follow through. What they're actually experiencing is the removal of everything that supported motivation in the first place. There is no longer immediate feedback. There is no longer a clear sense of progress after every step. There is no longer a controlled environment where outcomes feel guaranteed. Instead, there is uncertainty, repetition, and a requirement to keep going without constant reinforcement. And in that environment, the question is no longer whether you feel motivated. The question becomes whether you can operate without needing that feeling to guide you. This is why motivation feels unreliable. Not because it is weak, but because it is being used outside of its function. It was never meant to sustain long-term effort. It was only meant to initiate movement. Once movement begins, a different mechanism takes over. One that is not dependent on emotional intensity, but on structured behavior over time. If you continue to expect motivation to carry you through this phase, you will constantly feel like something is missing. You will look for ways to recreate the initial feeling, thinking that if you can just feel the same way again, you'll be able to continue. But even if that feeling returns, it will only last as long as you remain in a space where nothing is being required from you. The moment you return to the process, the same pattern will repeat. So the failure is not in your ability to stay motivated. The failure is in expecting motivation to function in a place where it has no role. Progress does not come from maintaining a feeling. It comes from adapting to an environment where that feeling is no longer relevant. And once you understand that, the entire problem changes. You're no longer trying to hold on to something that disappears. You're learning how to operate in a system that never depended on it to begin with. It is a real thing when someone feels motivated to change their life and move towards something better. That moment actually matters. But it is equally important to understand that the path ahead will require more than that feeling. Because once you begin, the process starts asking for consistency, patience, and the ability to continue without constant reinforcement. And that is where most people stop. Not because the goal was impossible, but because they expected it to feel easier than it actually is. The difficulty is not a barrier. It is the filter, and crossing that is what turns intention into something real.